My dear brothers and sisters, there are these verses that we read all the time that we must understand the meaning and the root and what part do we play and what should we be aware of in regards to these diseases. The Prophet ﷺ said, أَلَا إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ لَمُضْغَةً إِنْ صَلُحَتْ صَلُحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِنْ فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. That indeed in the heart is a morsel of, indeed in the body is a morsel of flesh. That if it is corrected, if it is rectified, then the whole body is corrected. And if it is corrupted, if it is dirty, if it is filthy, if it is corrupt, then the whole body becomes corrupt. Indeed, it is the heart. The heart is the place of Iman. It is supposed to be the home of Iman. But once that Iman is mixed in, and it truly cannot be mixed in with the true love of this dunya, and loving and appreciating this dunya for its own value, then a bunch of diseases begin to emerge that cannot exist at the same time as Iman. That Iman and these diseases cannot exist at the same time. The Prophet ﷺ said that there are two things that do not mix in the heart of a believer. There are two things that do not mix in the heart of a believer: hasad and Iman. He said, لا يجتمع في جوف عبد الإيمان والحسد. That envy, hasad, jealousy, envy, and Iman do not mix in the heart of a believer. Because the very root of hasad is not having Iman, is having the heart filled with love of this dunya. This is one of the ill effects, and the topic of this khutbah today, of loving this dunya. The effect is hasad, envy, because this world has no value to itself. And if you think about it rationally, this world has no value to itself. You compare infinity, you compare endlessness, Jannah and Jahannam, and you add whatever you want of this dunya, and the end, if you divide by zero or you divide by infinity, right? We know that this world is worth nothing, right? If you had 20 years to spend and then 40 years to enjoy, that means those 20 years of effort, that would be worth exactly 1/2 of the enjoyment time. But if the time to pay for our deeds or to enjoy the outcome of our deeds and closeness to Allah is if infinity is eternity, then this world, it doesn't matter what number you put on top. If you have infinity on the bottom, then this world is worth nothing. So it's worth nothing by any normal calculation. And the Prophet ﷺ said that if it was worth to Allah as much as the wing of a mosquito, then Allah wouldn't give a disbeliever in it one drink of water. If there was truly any value in what people were gaining in this world, then the people who do not beg from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and are not right with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and are in disobedience to Allah, then they do not expect anything of actual value. So Allah wouldn't give a disbeliever in it one drink of water. But this world is worth nothing. So He'll give a disbeliever palaces. And He'll give a disbeliever whatever they want in this world. But once it comes to that infinity, what they had in this world is worth nothing. يَوَدُّ الْمُجْرِمُ لَوْ يَفْتَدِي مِنْ عَذَابِ يَوْمِئِذٍ بِبَنِيهِ. That a person would wish on that day that he would give up his own children and his wife and his father and his mother, so he would be saved from the punishment. But no, indeed, he will taste the punishment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us. So this world is worth nothing. Once we start ascribing value to this world, once this world in itself has value to us, once our iman in that infinity and what is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is beyond our measure and capability and anything in comparison to this world, once our iman in that becomes weak, once we take that away, and then on the bottom we put maybe 60 years or 70 years, or maybe we wish to live for 80 years, then we will justify working hard day and night for the sake of the dunya, and we will justify disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of this world, and we will justify, spending, a certain amount of time, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to feel that we have done, an obligation, but then the rest of the time is about me. Once we value this dunya for what it is, then we will begin to have envy of others, and why shouldn't we have envy of others who have more of this dunya? Because then if it has actual value, then the person who has a better dunya than us is better than us. A person who has more of this dunya, who has the things that we want, then they are truly better than us by our calculation. And that stings people and it burns people. And this is from lack of iman. This is from lack of iman of what is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is from lack of understanding that this world, no matter what someone has in it, different than you, everything that is had in this world is a test. So you getting mad at what somebody else has is mad that he got a different test than you. Maybe his test is harder. If you were in a class and somebody got a harder test than you, and you got an easier test, would you be mad at the person who had a harder test? Everything that we have is an opportunity to either gain the rewards of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or gain punishment from Allah. That is the value of this dunya. It's a test. The only value is what we do with that which is given to us. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said that there shouldn't be hasad except in two matters. And that hasad isn't even wishing to take away the blessings of that person, but that hasad is wishing you were like that person. The Prophet ﷺ said that a person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him wealth, so he spends it in the day and the night seeking the pleasure of Allah. And the person that Allah gave the Quran, so he recites it in the day and the night. It didn't even say the person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Quran and that's it. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving somebody the Quran, that's a test and a responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving somebody money, that's a test and a responsibility. The hasad, the good envy, the ghib, it goes to the person who Allah gave that money and he's using it. The hasad is on his actions. And the person who Allah gave the Quran, that now he is spending his time day and night in the recitation of the Quran and teaching the Quran. Because this person is building for himself a home in the hereafter. The person who has the Quran, who is teaching, this person is building for himself a home in the hereafter. So these are people that we should be envious of in a good way, hoping that they have what they have, but we also become like them. But then if somebody has iman, then why isn't it hasad if you look at things from a worldly perspective? Then a person who has what you don't have and accomplished what you didn't accomplish, then they are better than you in a worldly perspective. So then in Iman, why shouldn't we feel negative feelings towards somebody who has what we did not have and accomplished what we did not accomplish? The Prophet ﷺ said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you will believe, none of you will attain Iman until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. So in fact, the mu'min becomes happy once he sees somebody who is doing better than him in the deen, who is serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen better. Notice, those two things the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, they are things of benefit to people. That somebody who has wealth, and he's spending it in the day and the night to help people. And the other one who has knowledge, who has the Quran, who is spending it in the day and the night to help people. That he's bringing other people up and lifting other people up. We become happy once we see something like this. In fact, we do not become upset. And the jealousy that we have is that we wish we could be like that person only. But then, what about once we have the love of this dunya in our hearts? What does that lead to? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ ابْنَيْ آدَمَ بِالْحَقِّ إِذْ قَرَّبَا قُرْبَانًا فَتُقُبِّلَ مِنْ أَحَدِهِمَا وَلَمْ يُتَقَبَّلْ مِنَ الْآخَرِ قَالَ لَأَقْتُلَنَّكَ قَالَ إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. That the story of the sons of Adam alayhi salam. Look at how envy played a role in the destruction of humanity. The sons of Adam alayhi salam, Habil and Qabil, one of them, he was more righteous. And once Allah, back then there's nobody to donate to. You have the whole world as your property, because you are the sons of Adam alayhi salam. And there's no, all the other human beings are your family or your children. So then who do you donate to? But then still we need to give up something for the sake of Allah. So for those people, Allah still instituted, for the sake of purifying them, Allah instituted a charity. But they have no one to give it to, so they would gather their wealth in an area, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send, if Allah accepts it, He will send a fire to eat it up. So then Habil, he brought his best wealth, and he put it forward for the sake of Allah. And Qabil, despite having whatever he wants from the world, he gathered the worst, the things he didn't really want. Maybe from the animals, the ones that were injured or were not fitting, and from the crops, the worst, the not fitting crops. And he put those forward now for the sake of Allah. In reality, there was something he did not want. So Allah accepted from one and He did not accept from the other. So what was his response? He didn't say, oh Allah, forgive me. The anger was not turned against himself. He did not feel remorse about himself. Immediately, he said, I'm going to kill you, to his brother. Because now he feels this is an insult to himself, that Allah accepted from you and He didn't accept from me. How can I make this right? I'm going to kill you. This is calculating things entirely by a dunya perspective. You go back to that in the story of Adam alayhi salam and the sin that brought us to this world. How did the shaitan deceive Adam alayhi salam to disobey Allah and eating from the tree? He said, look at those angels. Right? And the scholars, they mention that the angels were always worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and had such a high appearance of taqwa of Allah and goodness and righteousness. That Adam alayhi salam, he wanted to be like them. Perfect and dedicated to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, if you eat from this tree, you'll become an angel. Right? So this was some type of jealousy, but it was one for a prophet. That he saw these angels that were worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then Iblis said, you will become like them if you eat from this tree. You go back to that, to Iblis himself. He tried to misguide Adam alayhi salam using the very same thing that had caused him to be destroyed. Once he was the top worshipper of Allah, he was fine. And he was happy. And he worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night. This is the shaitan, this is Iblis. He worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much that Allah elevated him to the level of the angels. And he would be in the company of the highest angels worshipping Allah. But he was the top free-willed creation of Allah. The top worshipper of Allah. The example of the being the best. But inside his heart, he just liked the attention, and he just liked the status of being this great worshipper of Allah. So don't ever be satisfied. If you think that no, now I'm actually implementing the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and now I'm doing this and I'm doing goodness and doing righteousness, right? There's never a point where you say I'm doing enough righteousness and there's no need for me to worry, because you will never worship Allah the way that the shaitan worshipped Allah. In reality, inside, may Allah save us, we might have that same disease. So once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam alayhi salam, that was a better creation, the best of Allah's creation, humankind, and told Iblis to prostrate to him, to make sujood. Iblis, he refused. What did he say? He said, I'm better than him. He said, Ana khayrun min. You created me from fire and you created him from clay. Again, a worldly calculation. Allah created him and Allah created him out of whatever He willed. Allah tested him and Allah will test him. Stop trying to calculate things your own way, and don't worry about other people. A lot of people say, oh, okay, Islam, and yes, but then what about the people who are suffering? What about the people who have died and they didn't die upon Islam? What's going to happen to them? And what about my great-great-grandfather who was not a Muslim? Don't worry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with everybody fairly. Allah knows the chances He gave every single person, and if Allah didn't give the person this chance in this world, then He will give them the chance in the hereafter. Don't worry about Allah's business. Having envy in your heart against what somebody has in this dunya, that is questioning Allah's judgment. That is questioning Allah's judgment. That's saying, I don't think Allah made the right choice. Or I'm angry with the choice that Allah made. Allah should have given me, Allah shouldn't have given that person what He gave him. We hear the story of Umar radiallahu anhu, which was a lesson for all of us. When he came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he found him sleeping on a mat of palm fibers. From palm trees, the leaves, when they dry up, they become hard, so you can make things out of them, and roofs generally. But they would also make mats. And these are very rough. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was using it as a mattress to sleep on. So then Umar came, and the Prophet ﷺ got up and he saw the marks all down the Prophet ﷺ's side. So he began to cry and he said, O Messenger of Allah, the kings of Persia and of Rome on Byzantium, they are in such luxury, and you're the Messenger of Allah, you're better than all of them. And how are you going through all of this? So now was he jealous? No, he was asking a question from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ said, aren't you satisfied that for them is this dunya and for us is the akhirah? If you think you're entitled to something because you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that you should have a certain lifestyle to match, you know how great you are as a human being, or that your deen should make it so that your life is an easy life. And if you don't have an easy life, then you'll be dissatisfied with Allah. Then remember the situation of the prophets. Did they have easy lives? Look at the story of Musa alayhi salam. Look at the story of Jesus alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam. Look at the story of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. or those easy lives. The Prophet ﷺ said, the people of the greatest tests and tribulations, the most severe tests and hardships, are the prophets and then the righteous people. You want to be among the righteous people? Stop looking at other people who have, that's the opposite of righteousness. To look at what other people have in this world and to wish that you had the same or more, and even more than that, to wish that what they have is taken away from them. And if you were able to take it away from them without anybody seeing you, then you would do so. That is hasad. The opposite is to look at the prophets and see their simple lifestyle and humble lifestyle, and look at this dunya then, and look at this world and see that it has no value whatsoever. There are different faiths that slowly over time, they made living well in this world as an important part of their faith. And the faith, instead of becoming oriented towards the hereafter, became oriented towards this world. And we see that in a lot of the way a lot of people worship. And that is a very intrinsic part of the culture here. Even the people who are poor are shunned. And that is the opposite of Islam. This is in fact the people who are against the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. They came to him and they said, we'll sit with you as long as you kick those poor people out of your gathering.